in this video, we are going to start with a discussion of attitudes. An attitude is our evaluation of a person, an idea, or an object. Your attitude has three components. It has an affective component, so how you feel. It has a behavioral component, how you act. And there is a cognitive component, what you think about that thing. So we're going to focus on how you can persuade someone, change someone's attitude, or how it just changes on its own because of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological discomfort arising from holding two or more inconsistent attitudes, behaviors, or cognitions. So you have two thoughts that don't match, that conflict with each other, or how you act but what you think conflict. That is going to cause you to feel uncomfortable. It's going to cause that dissonance. And so if you have cognitive dissonance, something has to change. You have to eliminate that discomfort. One of the most famous experiments connected with this is the Festinger and Carl Smith experiment. What they did was they had participants come in and they did something really boring for an hour. Examples are like turn spools, a quarter turn, and then turn them back, move a pile of toothpicks from one side of the table to another and back again. They just bored them for an hour. After that, they said, hey, you remember how you came in, how a research assistant said this would be a worthwhile experiment? Well, that research assistant is not here. We need someone to tell the next participant in line that they really enjoyed this experiment. It's going to be good, worthwhile. Can you tell the next participant that you really enjoyed this experiment? And you know what? We might need you to come back and do that again. So we're going to put you on a retainer. We're going to give you, half the time it was $1, half the time it was $20, to tell this next participant that you really enjoyed the experiment. So they tell the next participant, hey, this is great, it's awesome. And then the researchers would say, okay, final thing, we just need you to privately rate how much you actually enjoyed this experiment. Now remember, this was really boring. They did something really boring for an hour. My question for you is, which group, the ones that got $1 or the ones that got $20, which group said they actually enjoyed the experiment? Okay, it was the $1 group. This is cognitive dissonance. For these participants, they have done the action. They did something boring. And then they lied and said it was awesome. That conflicts with a thought you have. You have a thought that you're not a liar. You are not a hypocrite. You're not going to say that you had an amazing time when it was really stupid. So you have this, I'm an honest person, I just lied, cognitive dissonance thing. For this, in cognitive dissonance in general, the way you can decrease it is you can have an external justification for what you did to eliminate your dissonance, or you have to create an internal justification. The $20 group, when they are, and this is all unconscious, when they are unconsciously thinking, why did I lie and say it was awesome when I got bored for an hour? Their external justification is because they got paid a lot of money. This experiment was done like in the 50s. $20 was a whole lot of money right then. That'd be like the equivalent of $60 today. My assumption is most of y'all would do something boring for 1 hour and then say, oh, I had fun, if you got paid $60. And you wouldn't feel bad about it. You got paid a lot of money. You will do something boring for an hour. It is worthwhile because you got paid good money. No dissonance there. So the $20 group didn't have their dissonance because they could justify it with the money they got. The $1 group couldn't justify it. It was $1. That'd be like you getting $3 to be bored for an hour and then lie about it. There was no external justification. And so to decrease that dissonance, they had to create an internal justification. They had to say, no, when I said it was really fun, I wasn't lying. It really was a worthwhile experiment. I really did enjoy doing it. They had to unconsciously change their opinion about the experiment to justify saying it was awesome. So that is cognitive dissonance. Another experiment connected with this is one that Aronson and Mills did. And this connects with initiations. For example, like hazing. Hazing is connected with cognitive dissonance. If you are going to go through something really horrible, painful, to become a part of the group, once you join that group, you have to justify all of the humiliation, all of the pain you went through to join it. So you have to think that group was worthwhile. You cannot think this is a stupid group I don't want to be a part of because of everything you just went through to get it. So if you go through some sort of initiation process, it will make you feel more committed to the group. It will make you like the group more because you need to justify what you just went through. Now, I am not saying hazing is a good thing. Hazing is horrible. It has killed people. But the reason some groups still keep it around is because it is effective. They need to find better techniques because it's horrible, but it's effective. So for the Aronson and Mills experiment, what they did, it was not physical hazing. It was more emotional hazing. They put up signs around campus saying, do you want to join this group that talks about the psychology of sex for women? And so all these women signed up saying, yes, I'll join this group. And then they put them into one of three groups. One group was the control group, no initiation. And one group was an easy initiation group where they had to say a list of mildly embarrassing words connected with sex. And then there was the difficult or severe initiation group. They had to say some really embarrassing things. Read it off this list about sex. After that, all of the participants in all the three groups, no initiation, easy initiation, and difficult initiation, listened to a recording of a group discussion so they could see what they were about to get into. It was a really boring discussion. It was just horrible. No one would want to be in this group. After listening to that recording, they were all asked, what did you think? Did that sound good? Are you excited to join this group? The no initiation group was like, no, thanks, I'm good, don't want to join. It's boring. The easy initiation group as well was like, maybe I don't want to be a part of this group. The difficult initiation group, the ones that had to really embarrass themselves, were like, oh, this sounds great, I can't wait to join. Because they had already done the action, saying the really embarrassing things, they had to justify it in their mind. Why? There's going to be dissonance if you do something really embarrassing to join this boring group. And so in order to justify the really embarrassing thing they did, they had to think the group was awesome. So they changed their opinion of this recording. It wasn't boring. This sounds awesome. I can't wait to join. They had to be committed to the group because they'd already done the embarrassing things. That is cognitive dissonance. They changed their attitude about the group. And the next way you can change your attitude is through persuasion. So persuasion is the process of changing our attitude towards something based on some kind of communication from another group or entity. The Yale attitude change approach was created by Hovland, who worked at Yale. And he says that there are 3 factors that connect with whether you are going to be able to persuade someone, whether a persuasive message is going to work. One is the source of the message. Who is trying to persuade you? Another is the content of the message, what exactly it is they are using to try to persuade you. And then one is the characteristics of the audience, who you are trying to persuade. So let's break these 3 down. For the source of the message, one is credibility. If the speaker seems credible, seems trustworthy, you will be more persuaded. For example, oh gosh, what is a good example? For example, I am going to, if Dr. Fauci tells me something about COVID, I'm going to believe it because I think he's credible. If my cousin, who has never taken a medical class in her life, tells me something about COVID that conflicts with what Fauci says, I'm not going to believe her. I don't see her as trustworthy. I don't see her as credible on the subject. She's not going to change my mind. Another factor is attractiveness. We are more persuaded by cute people. So this is why if you look at like TV commercials, there's going to be a lot of attractive or famous spokespeople. We trust them. We think they're credible because they're cute and famous. They'll change our opinion. We'll buy their product. For the content of the message, one factor is how subtle it is. More subtle messages are more effective. If it is really obvious someone is trying to change our mind, it's less effective. If it's sort of a covert way of trying to change our mind, that is going to work more. The sidedness matters as well. If it's a one-sided message or if it's a two-sided message. And this depends on the knowledge of whose mind you're trying to change. If you are someone that does not know much about an issue, a one-sided message is more persuasive. If someone gives you a two-sided message, they tell you both sides, it's just too much information, it's too confusing because you don't know a lot about the topic. So for uneducated, unknowledgeable audiences, one-sided messages are more effective. If it's a knowledgeable audience, you need to use a two-sided message. If you only use a one-sided message for a knowledgeable audience, they're going to think, why isn't this person telling me the other side? Why aren't they playing devil's advocate? Is it because their side isn't good enough to refute the opposing opinion? So unknowledgeable, one-sided, knowledgeable, two-sided. Also, the timing matters as well. And again, this is one that varies. If you are giving, two people are trying to persuade you and the messages are going to be back to back, then you want to be the first person to talk. The information, the argument presented first is more persuasive if they're back-to-back arguments. If there is going to be some sort of delay between the two arguments, then you want to be the last one. You want to be the second one to go if there's going to be a delay between the two messages. So that's the content of the message. And then finally, the characteristic of the audience. For this, people who are less intelligent are more persuadable. People who have moderate self-esteem are more easily persuaded than people that have really high self-esteem or really low self-esteem. And the age range that is most persuadable for adults is 18 to 25. So in the adult range, 18 to 25 is more persuadable than over 25. If you're going to look at the whole lifespan, it's 10 to 25 that's more persuadable. Below 10, like you just don't know enough to be persuaded. And then above 25, you're more set in your ways. It's not going to work as much. So 18 to 25 for adults is the most persuadable age range. For the other way to think about persuasion, it's the elaboration likelihood model. The elaboration likelihood model looks at different variables in the attitude change approach, in that Yale attitude change approach, and what makes it more likely that your mind will be changed. It focuses specifically on the central route of processing versus the peripheral route of processing. So for this, you are going to, for the central route of processing, focus on logic. You are going to get straight to the data, straight to the argument to try to win your case. If you are using the central route of processing, your argument, the message has to be really strong. The central root of processing, if you're looking at the who is doing it, it needs to be someone who's really credible, someone who seems like an expert. Attractiveness isn't going to matter as much because that's not the argument, that's something else. And for the audience who you're trying to persuade, for the central root of processing, it works best for people who are knowledgeable about the subject, people who are really engaged. So central root of processing, you have to have a strong data-driven message from a very trustworthy, credible source to a knowledgeable audience. For the peripheral root of processing, this is things apart from the message. This is things like, what is the music in the background of the ad? This is things like how cute the person in the commercial is. This is the catchy slogans that you see. This is everything except the direct message. So this is for the source of the message. This is where attractiveness matters more. For what the actual message is, it's not going to focus on the argument. It's going to focus on what emotions get elicited. And it's going to work best for unknowledgeable audiences. The peripheral root is also less permanent because it's sort of this fluffy exterior stuff. It's more easy for that change to wear off or for that attitude to get changed yet again because it's more of the superficial stuff. So that's the elaboration likelihood model. Next thing for this is foot in the door. Foot in the door is when someone asks you to do something small, you agree to it, and because you agree to that small thing, if they ask you to do something bigger, you are going to agree to that as well. A famous experiment of this was done by Friedman and Fraser. And what they did was they went to people's doors and said, hi, we would like to put a really big yard sign in your yard about safe driving. Can we put a big, ugly sign in your yard about driving safe? And when they just went to people's doors and asked that, 17% said yes, because it's a big, ugly sign. In the next part of the experiment, they went to people's doors and said, hi, can you sign this petition saying that safe driving is important? And I mean, like, what monster's not going to sign that? So everyone signs this petition because all it is a signature, easy, small thing. They sign this petition saying safe driving is important. The next day, they come back, Friedman and Fraser come back to the house and say, thank you so much for signing that petition. Could we put a big sign in your yard about safe driving? And 55% said yes. Because they had said yes to the small thing, they were more likely to say yes to the big thing. That is the foot in the door phenomenon. And the next thing to go over is conformity. For conformity, this is the change in a person's behavior to go along with the group, even if you don't actually agree with the group. So you just do what the people around you do. Asch is the one who did the famous experiment of this, Solomon Asch. And so he has what is called the Asch effect. This is the influence of the group majority on an individual judgment. Three factors go into whether or not you will conform. One is the size of the majority. Up to a point, the more people who are going along with the group, the more likely you are to conform to the group as well. Another one is the presence of a dissenter. If even one other person doesn't conform to the group, your rate of conformity goes to basically zero. If someone else is going to not conform with you, it makes it much more likely you won't conform. And then finally, the public or private nature of the response. If you have to privately give your opinion, you are less likely to conform to the group. If it is public, you are significantly more likely to conform to the group. The famous experiment that Asch did connected with this was his line study. And so what he did, he had 7 people sitting around a table. 6 of them were Confederates. 6 of them were fake participants. And he would say, okay, we have, oh, hold on, let me redo that, because that's not straight. He'd say, we have 3 lines here, A, B, C. Which of those 3 lines matches this comparison line? Which one is closest in length to the comparison line? Now, this is not tricky. Like, the answer is obvious. And so, by the way, the participant, the one real participant who was always in the last seat, thought they were doing a perception study, a perceptual test. So they'd go around and everyone would say, oh, it's the first line, it'd be easy. They'd do this a few times, and then the 3rd or 4th time, the first participant, who was really a fake participant, a Confederate, would say, I think the answer is B. They'd give an obviously wrong answer. And then everyone else would go around, B, 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 B. Then they'd get to the real participant. What Solomon Asch cared about is, what did the real participants say? Oh gosh, let me make sure I say these stats right. The real participants gave a wrong answer, hold on, let me make sure I say it right so I don't confuse you. 2/3 of the participants gave a wrong answer at least once. So 2/3, when they were given a scenario like this, would say, I think the answer is B, because everyone else said the answer was B. This is conformity. They were going along with the group even though they knew it was the wrong answer. When this happened, this is the normative social influence. There are 2 types of social influence, 2 reasons you conform. The normative one is when you conform to fit in, to feel good, to be accepted by the group. In Asch's experiment, they were using the normative social influence. They knew that was the wrong answer, but they didn't want to look weird. So when you conform to the group because you don't want to stand out, you don't want to be the weirdo, that is normative social influence. Informational social influences is when you conform because you think the group is competent, they have the correct information, especially if it's an ambiguous task, it's something you haven't done before. For these 2 types of social influence, my question for you is, which one is more permanent? Which one is going to stick around longer? It is going to be the informational, sometimes called informative, social influence. An example of that, the very first time you walked into GLAR, your first year, you don't know the process. Like, do you put your stuff down first and then go get food? Do you mark your spot with silverware? Like, where are you supposed to sit in GLAR? Who knows what's going on? This is a new situation. What you do is you look around and see what other people are doing. And then you copy, you conform to what other people are doing. You assume the other people in GLAR know what's going on. You're going to conform to their behaviors because you think they're competent, they have the correct information. And so the next time you go to GLAR, you're going to repeat those behaviors again because they're still probably right. If you conform because you just don't want to seem like a weirdo in front of this group, when that group is gone, there's no reason to conform. There's no reason to keep that behavior going. So the informational social influence is stronger than the normative social influence. The final thing for this slide, and the final thing I will do in this video, is compliance. Compliance is when you go along with a request or a demand. So conformity, no one is trying to force you to conform. No one is saying you have to do this. Like when you go into GLAR, it's not like people come up to you and say, this is the order we do things. You just do what the group does. For compliance, it's when someone else says, I want you to do this, and so you do it. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the demand of this other person, you're just going to comply. You're just going to go along with it. So compliance is slightly different because it's a more explicit thing that they're asking you to do. Conformity can be more ambiguous. And I will stop there for this video because the final type of going along for other people is you're going to see a video. It's going to be a longer sort of thing, and I don't want this one to get too long. So we'll stop there for this video, and we will start in with Milgram's obedience study in the next video.